If you die today, I'll become free forever.
He lay silent on a hospital bed, machines breathing for him. Everyone thought he was gone. But what no one knew was this. Behind those closed eyes, he could hear everything, including the words that shattered his soul. If you die tonight, I'll finally be free. This is not just a story about betrayal. It's about patience, truth, and the moment silence becomes power. If you believe truth always finds its way to the light, subscribe now, because this story will stay with you long after it ends. Samuel Chanda was more than a billionaire. He was living proof that kindness and success could exist in the same heartbeat. Before the glass towers, before the headlines and awards, there was a young boy standing barefoot on a dusty construction site, watching men work under a burning sun. Samuel remembered those days clearly. The hunger, the doubt, the nights when hope felt thinner than sleep. And when success finally came, he carried those memories with him like a quiet promise. If I ever make it, I won't forget anyone. He didn't. His employees didn't call him sir. Behind his back, they called him fair. He knew the names of janitors, security guards, and drivers. He asked about their families. He paid for surgeries no one knew about, school fees no one asked for, and chances people thought they didn't deserve. To the world, he was a billionaire. To those around him, he was the man who lifted others while climbing himself. At home, Samuel was different, softer. His wife, Elena, was the only person who could quiet the noise of his empire with a single look. She knew the weight he carried, the pressure behind his calm smile. To her, he wasn't a tycoon. He was just Samuel, the man who still held her hand at red lights and believed tomorrow could always be better. That ordinary evening began like any other. The city lights blurred past as Samuel drove down a quiet stretch of road, exhaustion settling into his bones. His phone buzzed. Another problem, another decision. But for once, he ignored it. He just wanted to get home. Then it happened, a flash of headlights, the screech of tires, metal screaming against metal. The world spun violently, glass exploding like rain, the air knocked from his lungs. When the car finally came to a dead stop, silence rushed in, heavy and terrifying. Samuel didn't move, not because he couldn't, but because, in that moment, instinct told him to stay still. The most powerful man in the room, now alone on a dark road, made a choice that would change everything. And soon, he would hear words he was never meant to hear. They called it a coma. Doctor spoke the word gently, as if softness could soften its meaning. Machines hummed beside the bed, green lines rising and falling with mechanical certainty. Charts were updated. Timelines were guessed. Hope was measured in percentages. And the world accepted it. But Samuel Chanda was awake. Not the way awake people were. No blinking eyes, no movement, no voice. He was awake in the cruelest way possible, trapped behind his own stillness. His mind was sharp, painfully clear, while his body lay silent, heavy, unresponsive. He tried to move a finger. Nothing. He tried to open his mouth. Nothing. Panic surged, hot and violent. But even that had nowhere to go. So he listened. He listened to the ambulance door slam, to the hurried footsteps in the ER, to doctors speaking about him instead of to him. Severe trauma, one voice said. Brain activity is minimal, another replied. Prepare the family. Family, that word anchored him. Elena. He tried to reach for her, to scream her name, but his body betrayed him again. All he could do was listen as the world made decisions over his silent form. Time lost meaning. Days blurred into nights, marked only by changing shifts and the rhythm of machines. Nurses came and went. Some spoke kindly, explaining procedures as if he could hear them. They were right. Others treated him like furniture, a body occupying a bed. Then Elena arrived. Samuel felt her presence before he heard her. She always had that effect. Her voice trembled as she spoke his name, and something inside him broke open. I'm here, she whispered, fingers brushing his hand. I won't leave you. If he could have cried, he would have. She talked to him for hours. About the house, the garden she kept forgetting to water, the unfinished argument they never resolved. Her words wrapped around him like warmth in a freezing room. For a moment, the darkness didn't feel so suffocating. But not everyone came with love. Executives arrived next, their expensive shoes clicking against hospital floors. They spoke in low voices, pretending to be respectful, but Samuel heard the calculation underneath. If he doesn't wake up, the board needs stability. We can't freeze operations forever. They stood at the foot of his bed, discussing his empire like it was already unowned. Projects, shares, power, everything he'd built with care was suddenly just assets. And then there were the prayers. Some were real. Samuel could hear it in the pauses, the emotion choking the words. Nurses who barely knew him whispered hope into the room. Old employees stood quietly, promising gratitude and loyalty. Others prayed like actors. "God, take him peacefully," one relative murmured, but the relief in his voice was unmistakable. "Whatever happens, we'll manage," another said, already planning. Samuel learned something terrifying in that bed. People reveal themselves when they believed you couldn't hear. The worst moments came at night, when the hospital quieted and shadows stretched long across the walls. Fear crept in. What if this was permanent? What if he was buried alive inside his own body forever? Aware, listening, helpless? He tried again and again to move, to force his eyelids open, to send any signal at all. Nothing. Then one evening, voices returned, familiar ones. Elena wasn't alone. A doctor explained things slowly, carefully. "The scans haven't changed. We still don't see purposeful response. Medically, he remains in a coma." Samuel wanted to scream, "I'm here." Elena asked questions. Too many questions. The kind only someone paying close attention would ask. "Is it possible he can hear us?" she said quietly. The room paused. "It's unlikely," the doctor replied. "But talking to him doesn't hurt." Elena stepped closer to the bed. Her next words didn't sound like comfort. They sounded like a test. Her voice lowered, steady but sharp. "Samuel, if you can hear me, I need you to listen carefully." His heart raced. "I need to say something," she continued, glancing toward the door. "Something I was never supposed to say out loud." The room seemed to shrink. Samuel focused with everything he had, clinging to each syllable like a lifeline. Elena took a slow breath. "If you don't wake up," she said softly, "people will finally stop pretending." Her fingers tightened around his. "And I need to know," she whispered, "who you really trusted and who was just waiting for you to disappear." Samuel felt a chill crawl through him. This wasn't goodbye. This was a warning. And for the first time since the accident, he understood something far more frightening than being trapped in silence. The truth was coming, and once spoken, nothing would ever be the same. When Elena leaned close to Samuel's face, the room was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. No doctors, no nurses, no audience, just the steady hum of machines and a silence thick enough to hold secrets. Samuel felt her breath near his ear. He waited for tears, for the familiar tremble in her voice, for the woman who once held his hand at red lights and whispered dreams into the dark. None of that came. Instead, she exhaled, slowly. Relief. It was subtle but unmistakable. The kind of relief people feel when a door finally closes behind them. "I don't know how long you'll stay like this," Elena said softly. "The doctors keep giving me timelines, probabilities, but honestly," she paused, "this is the first time in years my mind feels quiet." Samuel's heart tightened. She wasn't speaking to him. She was speaking over him. "I know how this sounds," she continued, straightening slightly. "Everyone thinks I'm the devoted wife, the woman who stood by the billionaire, who built everything from nothing." A faint, humorless laugh escaped her. "They don't know what it's like living in the shadow of a man who owns the air in every room he walks into." Samuel tried to move, tried to deny it. "Nothing. You controlled everything," she said, her voice calm, almost clinical. "Where we lived, who we saw, when we traveled. Even silence felt scheduled with you." She leaned closer again. "You called it protection. I called it suffocation." The word hit him harder than the crash ever had. Suffocation. He replayed memories desperately, moments he thought were love, Decisions he believed were thoughtful. Had he mistaken control for care? Had his need to protect slowly turned into a cage? Elena's voice softened, but it wasn't kindness. It was honesty without fear. I stayed because it was easier, because the world worshipped you, because leaving a man like you doesn't make you brave. It makes you suspicious. She paused, and then the accident happened. Her fingers brushed his wrist, not tender, assessing, and suddenly, she whispered, I was free. Samuel felt something inside him fracture, not loudly, not all at once, but in slow, quiet pieces. No more expectations, no more being watched, no more living as an extension of your name. She inhaled deeply. I hate myself for feeling this way, but I don't regret it. There were still no tears, only truth. I've already spoken to the lawyers, she added, almost casually. If things don't change, they won't keep you on life support forever. And when that happens, she hesitated. Your empire will need someone stable, someone familiar. Samuel understood. This wasn't grief. This was strategy. Footsteps echoed outside the door. Elena stepped back instantly, rearranging her face into concern, into heartbreak rehearsed to perfection. By the time a nurse entered, Elena's eyes shimmered, her voice trembling. I was just talking to him, she said softly. I know he can hear me. Samuel realized then how dangerous silence could be. Days passed. Elena visited often, but never alone anymore. There were always witnesses, doctors, family, board members. She held his hand when others were present. She cried on cue. She spoke lovingly about memories Samuel now questioned. But when they were alone again, she didn't pretend. You should rest, she told him one night. There's nothing left for you to worry about. He listened as she took calls in the hallway, as she laughed quietly with people who used to fear his authority, as plans were made, restructures, exits, new leadership. His life's work was being divided while he lay inches away, unheard. And yet, something unexpected happened inside the darkness. Samuel stopped panicking. Instead, he observed. He noticed which nurses spoke to him kindly even when no one was watching, which employees visited without cameras or updates, which relatives stopped coming once they realized there would be no immediate inheritance. He listened carefully, and he learned everything. One afternoon, a young nurse stayed longer than necessary. She adjusted his blanket gently, leaned close, and whispered, I don't know if you can hear me, but you matter, even like this. Her words lingered long after she left. That night, Elena returned. She stood by the window, arms crossed, staring at the city lights Samuel once ruled. I used to think your strength was what made you powerful, she said. Now I realize it was your absence. Samuel felt no anger, only clarity. The accident hadn't broken him. It had stripped away the noise. And in that silence, he finally saw the truth. Not just about Elena, but about himself, about the blind spots kindness can create, about how even good men can build empires so big they forget to look inward. When Elena left the room that night, Samuel made a decision, a quiet one, a dangerous one. He would not wake up yet, not until he was ready, not until the final masks fell, not until the people who thought he was gone finished revealing exactly who they were. Because when Samuel Chanda finally opened his eyes, the world would not recognize a man who returned. While ambition circled Samuel's bed like a patient predator, quiet loyalty stood guard. It didn't wear suits. It didn't whisper about timelines or power. It didn't calculate what came after him. It simply stayed. Her name was Mara. She was a night shift nurse. The kind hospitals rarely celebrate because her work happened when the world slept. She didn't speak in dramatic tones or rush through her duties like a checklist. When she entered Samuel's room, she spoke to him the way people spoke to someone who mattered. Good evening, Mr. Chanda, she said the first night she was assigned to him, adjusting the floor with careful hands. It's quiet tonight. You picked a good time to rest. Samuel heard her, every word. She explained what she was doing, not because protocol required it, but because she believed he deserved to know. She told him when the medication might make him feel heavy. She apologized if something was cold. She hummed softly while checking vitals, as if sound itself could anchor a soul to the world. Most people talked around him. Mara talked to him. And then there was David, Samuel's younger brother. David didn't come with speeches or rehearsed grief. He came with a chair he dragged closer to the bed and a presence that felt stubbornly familiar. He didn't beg Samuel to wake up. He didn't bargain with God. He talked like Samuel was just quiet for a while. "Remember when you told me silence was useful?" David said one afternoon, leaning back. "You said it was where the truth hid." Samuel remembered. "You always were dramatic." David continued with a faint smile. "So if this is one of your tests, just know I'm not failing it." David never looked at the machines. He looked at Samuel's face, at his hands, at the subtle rhythms others ignored. "You're still here," he said confidently. "I know, my brother." It was Mara who noticed the first sign. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden awakening. No miracle. Just a pause. She was adjusting Samuel's blanket when she spoke Elena's name. Routine, casual. "Your wife visited earlier today." Samuel's breathing shifted. Barely, but it changed. Mara froze. She waited, watched the monitor, said the name again. "Elena." Again, a slight irregularity. Not panic, not pain, recognition. Her heart began to race, but she kept her voice calm. "Mr. Chanda," she said softly, leaning closer. "If you can hear me, you don't have to do anything big. Just stay with me." She said David's name next. "David." This time, Samuel's fingers twitched. Not enough for alarms. Not enough for doctors to rush in. Enough for someone who believed to know. Mara didn't run to report it immediately. She didn't want noise. She wanted certainty. Over the next few nights, she tested gently. Names, voices, familiar stories. Samuel responded every time, but only to some, never to Elena, always to David. Hope didn't arrive like a trumpet. It arrived like a whisper that refused to leave. Mara began documenting patterns quietly. Not conclusions, observations. She invited another nurse she trusted to watch. She asked David to speak during certain moments. "You don't have to convince anyone yet," she told him. "Just talk to him." David talked. He talked about childhood fights and shared secrets, about the night Samuel paid his tuition without telling him, about the promise they made on their father's grave, to never forget who they were before success. Samuel's breathing deepened when David spoke. Once, just once, his eyelid fluttered. David's voice broke. "I knew it," he whispered, gripping the bedrail. "I knew you were fighting." Outside that room, the world moved differently. Elena's confidence grew. She scheduled meetings. She smiled more. She began wearing brighter colors. Her voice carried less weight of waiting. Inside that room, something ancient stirred. Mara spoke to Samuel one night after a particularly long shift. "I don't know what you're carrying," she said quietly, checking his pulse. "But I know this, you're not done. People don't hold on like this if they're finished." She paused. "And when you're ready, we'll be ready too." Samuel wanted to answer. He wanted to thank her. Instead, he did the only thing he could. He waited, because waiting, you realized, was power. Days turned into weeks. Doctors remained cautious. Some dismissed Mara's notes. Others frowned but couldn't deny the consistency. David became a constant presence, unmovable, unquestioning. And slowly, carefully, hope settled into the room like it belonged there. Not loud, not demanding, just steady. Samuel understood something then. Something he had missed while building empires and saving others. True loyalty didn't announce itself. It didn't need witnesses. It showed up when there was nothing to gain. And when the moment finally came, the moment that would decide everything, it wouldn't be the ambitious voices that pulled him back. It would be the ones who saw him, even when the world believed he was already gone. The pressure didn't arrive all at once. It crept in quietly, through urgent meetings, sharpened voices, and decisions made too quickly for a man who was supposedly still breathing but already being replaced. Doctors were asked harder questions. Timelines were pushed. Words like quality of life and reasonable outcomes began to surface with unsettling frequency. Samuel heard them all. He listened as Elena stood beside his bed, her voice calm, composed, almost convincing. "He wouldn't want this," she said one afternoon, her hand resting lightly on the rail. "He hated being dependent. Prolonging this, it's cruel." Cruel. The word echoed. Mara noticed the shift immediately. So did David. There was tension in the air now, an urgency that hadn't existed before. Conversations stopped when they entered the room. Decisions were being made faster than protocol allowed. That was when David leaned close to Samuel and whispered, "If you're still in there, I think it's time." Samuel agreed. That night, when the room was full, when witnesses mattered, Mara was adjusting a monitor as Elena spoke softly to a doctor. "I think we're ready to discuss next steps," Elena said. "He's been like this long enough." Samuel felt the familiar stillness around him. Then he broke it. His eyes opened, just for a second at first. "Enough." Mara froze. The doctor's words died mid-sentence. Elena stepped back as if the air had been knocked from her lungs. "Samuel?" David whispered. Samuel opened his eyes again, this time fully. The room erupted. Calls were made. Alarms weren't needed. Truth was louder than machines. Doctors rushed in stunned, checking responses, shining lights, asking questions. Samuel answered the simplest one. He squeezed David's hand. Elena stood frozen, her face pale, the performance forgotten. Over the next hours, fragments became sentences. Blinks became nods. The official word changed, from coma to misdiagnosed locked-in state, from unlikely to remarkable recovery. But the real reckoning didn't happen in charts. It happened in silence. Days later, when Samuel could finally speak, his voice was weak, but clear. "I heard everything," he said. The room went still. Elena laughed nervously. "You were unconscious," she said quickly. "That's not." "I heard everything," Samuel repeated. The color drained from her face. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He simply stated facts, words she had spoken when she believed him gone, plans she had made, relief she had confessed. David watched. Mara stood by the door, eyes steady. "There will be no public scene," Samuel said calmly. "No revenge. No humiliation." Elena exhaled, too soon. "But," he continued, "you will step away from the company, from my life." The legal process was quiet, clean, irreversible. Control returned to hands that had never tried to steal it. Decisions were reviewed, positions reshuffled. Those who waited for his absence found themselves exposed, not by anger, but by truth. And the ones who stayed, they were remembered. Mara received a letter first, then a promotion she hadn't asked for. David became more than a brother. He became a partner. As for Samuel, recovery was slow, painful, honest, but he returned changed, not hardened, aware, because silence had done what noise never could. It had revealed loyalty. It had uncovered betrayal. It had stripped love of witnesses and shown its true face. And when Samuel Chanda finally spoke again, he didn't need to shout. The truth already had. Sometimes, the most powerful move isn't the loudest, the fastest, or the most dramatic. Sometimes it's waiting, watching, listening. Samuel Chanda's story reminds us that silence is not weakness. It's preparation. It's in quiet moments that truth reveals itself, loyalty shines through, and the people who matter most show their colors. Life will put us in situations where we feel powerless, unheard, or overlooked. And yet, as this story shows, patience can become our greatest strength. Observing before reacting, understanding before judging, and trusting that the right moment will arrive. These are the quiet powers that shape outcomes far greater than impulse ever could. If this story reminded you to trust your patience, to listen carefully, and to believe that truth always surfaces, then don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe to this channel, because some stories don't just entertain us. They change how we see people, power, and ourselves. And remember, sometimes staying silent isn't giving up. It's getting ready to rewrite everything.